For professional advice with a personal touch, consult F.L. Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
Good evening. Welcome to today's Entrepreneur, presented by F.L. Fuller Landau, a program about the entrepreneurial spirit that drives Quebec business. And my name is Dan Delmar, along with FL's Josh Miller. Welcome back, Josh.
Hello, Dan.
And tonight on the show, we'll be speaking with Andrew Murray of Spotful, a growing Montreal-based company doing some very interesting web and design work around the world. So we'll talk to Andrew in a little while. We'll also talk about taxes, of course. It's your busy time of the season, and Nick Moraitis will be by to talk about some international tax issues, including capital gains exemptions, permanent establishment issues, and more.
Fun stuff.
That is later in the program, so our tax guru, Nick, will be along with us. But first, a look at some of the entrepreneurial stories of the week and our question of the week about entrepreneur challenges coming from our group. And this one is from my colleague Lara. And here's her question for this week, Josh. If a client isn't convinced about your pricing, how can you change their mind, especially if you're sort of in the creative sector? And what's the best way for newer businesses to establish decent pricing models?
Hypnosis and brainwashing always work well because then you don't really get that many questions. But it definitely, I think consumers are becoming a little savvier, a little pickier. There's a lot of information online, yet they pick and choose what they want to read and want to hear and want to understand. So it really takes a lot of time and effort and energy to educate your customer about what they're actually spending their money on. They might think, oh, I'm paying somebody to take care of my social media. What does that really mean? They're just throwing a few words every other day. It takes no time. It's like 30 seconds a day. What am I paying for? Well, but the reality is, we know content is king, as everybody says, and it takes a lot more energy, a lot more effort, a lot more thought. It's not just about throwing a few words down, as you very well know, Dan, and I'm sure Andrew could say the same thing. So it comes down to educating your customer. And say, listen, we in our field too, in our professional field, it's because it's not cheap. Professional services are big like any other, and it's basically, what did you do for that money? And they don't always see what happens behind the scenes. So you kind of have to dissect a little bit, as boring and dreadful as it sounds, dissect a little bit and go into it. Sometimes people are better off in person, face to face, so you can kind of gauge your reaction. I prefer that. However, there's a lot to be said for just typing out an email and saying, this is the black and white of it, and move on from there, because maybe you're giving them more information. They just said, you know what, they'll throw their hands up in the air. What
about saying, hey, look at these competitors, we're better priced than them? Is that good, or is that sort of giving the customer options?
I think if it works to your advantage, absolutely. Now, there's always going to be somebody cheaper than you. So the question is, what's your value proposition? What are you selling them? What are you really bringing to the table that's not the same like everybody else? If you're a commodity and you're bringing the exact same thing as everybody else, then yeah, you better beat your competitor's price. But if there's because your client's always going to say, but my friend said that, but my friend pays that, without really knowing what their friend is actually paying for. So it's good to have that comparison to competitors, but it can't be the only thing. There's got to be a little bit of meat. And in turn, you want your customer to sell for you. The reality is most people get their business for referrals from existing customers. It takes far less energy to sell an existing customer than it does to sell a brand new one. So let them understand what you do. Let them see the value that they're bringing, that they're quote unquote happy to pay for the service. And then they can be properly educated and sell kind of your product or your service to their friends. So it can actually work very much to your advantage and in a bit of a business development mode if you answer that question properly.
And thanks very much for the advice, Josh. And speaking of sort of content and social media, this entrepreneurial stories from the Financial Post a little while back, Stop Selling, the hard truth of social media marketing. And this I think is something I'm going to be largely on board with because a lot of people treat social media as, I suppose, just a unlimited advertising platform, but it's more than that.
It is. And I think today, people don't necessarily buy from a social media ad, but you can get visibility. You can brand yourself. You can create that look and feel that you're trying to portray of your business. But if you're going to go and boost your post because you're trying to sell a seminar and somebody, I'm not so sure that's working today. But if you want to have your look and feel resonate with the group or similar group of people, then yeah, that can work well in social media. But to actually use social media to sell, I'm not so sure that really works anymore. And I'm not the guru. You might actually be more the guru than I, Dan, in that. But I'm not so convinced. We get so many posts and so much information overload through social media, whether it's Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter or Instagram or what have you. And I'm just not so sure that I'm clicking there to go buy something. Now, if it was a video that I'm watching and there's some in-video transaction that I want to click on, that's a whole other story. That'll be great. But we'll hear more about that later when we talk with Andrew from Spotful.
For sure, and content strategy is important. You want to sort of, these days you have to give your customers added value to visiting the store or the Facebook page, and pushing the sales job on them is not necessarily the most effective strategy.
As we said before, you have to create the why. Why is somebody going to walk into your store? Why is somebody going to buy your product? Why is somebody going to enlist or join that membership or get your service? There's got to be a reason why, whether it's social responsibility, whether it's it just happens to be fits a need because nobody else out there is doing it and it's unique, whether it's just some crazy off the cuff thing that somebody says, I need that because nobody else has it. But the reason, you have to create the why. We've said it so many times on the program. It applies online just as it does apply to bricks and mortar.
The battle over trademarks between Sleep Country Canada and Sears. What could we learn about that dicey issue?
I think it's just a question of making sure your trademark is actually, making sure your tagline, your name, whatever you want is actually trademarked, because you never know who out there is going to take advantage. Sleep Country, had the best sleep. I don't even remember what it was, but Sears used a similar line that Sleep Country had. Now Sears is technically much bigger, regardless of the fact that they're going to fall soon, I'm sure. Editorial comment. But Sleep Country, who's had this line out there forever, said, you know what? I don't care. I trademarked it X number of years ago. I'm going to go with it. Now, it's not just a question about trademarking it. It's a question about how long have you had it as trademark, how comfortable it, how often is it used. There's got to be a number of factors that go into it before you can argue or win your injunction, if that's what you're actually going to do. Bottom line is, people think of protecting their intellectual property. People think of protecting their software and their I guess whatever they spend their shred credits on, all the development. But people don't necessarily think of protecting their tagline. People don't necessarily think of saying, I got something so catchy, why don't I protect that? And that you can trademark. I'm not a lawyer, not a barrister, I'm not a solicitor for most things, but if you don't protect that catchy line that you're going to be using for decades, then somebody else will come and grab it.
This is an interesting startup in the health sector. They are basically allowing you to see a doctor without leaving work.
This is, I was just waiting for this. I mean, there's the evolution of the health field is quite something. Online convenience, we hear about it, we talk about it so often. Now it's come to the health sector, and it's not that it's not been there for a while, but it is still fairly nascent in its lifestyle creation, call it what you want. And this is great. I know people are going to be a little skeptical. How the hell are you going to diagnose something through your mobile data? However, you can possibly do some basic stuff. I'm not feeling this. They can take pictures. They can take a video of whatever they need to take a video of so the doctor can see. It might be censored or privacy data or what have you. But that information can actually translate into productivity, because if you have these big companies, you have these large law firms or big conglomerates, and they can save on people going to the doctor because it's at least half a day, or if you're in Quebec, it could be a day or so. We won't go into that.
Years, maybe.
A couple of years. Then it can actually even be more productive. So maybe it's worthwhile for companies to get on board and say, hey, you know what? We'll get a package. We'll let our employees join this, and at least it's basic coverage so that if there's some brief thing that they can check, then they can save a lot of time.
Real quick, I like the story. Why are bonuses not always the best way to motivate employees?
Because money doesn't drive people all the time. It's very simple. So what does drive people? It's going to be different with everybody, but you have to know your people and drive them. Maybe it's time off. Maybe it's a weekend away. Maybe it's a full fur coat. Maybe it's a ride in a helicopter for a day. Who knows?
Recognition.
It's just basic recognition, but money does not drive everything. Certainly not today.
Thanks very much. And coming up, we'll chat with Andrew Murray of Spotful. That is on the way. And, of course, tax advice toward the end of the program. But first, 7:15, CJAD 800 traffic. Here's Kira.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult FL Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
Welcome back to today's Entrepreneur, inspiring stories from outstanding business people. Dan Delmar and FL's Josh Miller with you. And Josh, we can make the show completely about Montreal startups in the tech sector if you wanted to. And here tonight is another example of that.
It's absolutely amazing. It's a city that is filled with that. Between that and the gamers, it's a lot of fun.
Welcome, Andrew Murray of Spotful. Welcome to the program, Andrew.
Thanks very much, guys. Happy to be here.
So first question is the easiest. What is Spotful? Tell us what this company is all about.
Yeah, of course. So Spotful is a technology company that provides tech for video publishers to be able to embed any type of web functionality inside of shareable video. So any type of functionality that a business or a video blogger depends on, like e-commerce, signups, Google Maps, whatever it happens to be, we're able to support that in video and send it viral.
So instead of, like an ad over a YouTube video, this is an app really within the video.
That's right. Yeah, we focus on being able to weave kind of functionality and really kind of conversion and growth right into video storylines.
Can you give a bit of an example, like where somebody could see that I'm watching a video and I'll click on something to make it happen?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we work with pretty much every type of company you can imagine, from insurance to travel to the music industry. So you can imagine you're watching a great video blog of your friends in Brazil. Well, we've got technology to enable you to kind of click on that location and see really like the Expedia booking engine that will get you there in that moment during that experience. So we're completely focused on weaving kind of that moment of transaction, I guess, or commitment into a video storyline. Now,
how long ago did this start? Like, where did this idea come from?
So Spotful's been in business now for about 4 years, about 3 and change. We actually started in the art space. I'm from Halifax, and I used to volunteer quite a bit on arts boards and with galleries, events, stuff like that. And something I noticed was that they were, publishing a huge amount of video. And the first version of Spotful was an experience where you would be able to tour a gallery or see an artist talk or something like that, and actually reach out and click on a piece of artwork sitting in the background, and access the artist's story, understand like where the inspiration came from, like the background of that piece, and ultimately buy the painting. When it came out of the tank, the first version, Spotful could support end-to-end transaction inside video. And that was really exciting for us. It was kind of a happy accident in many ways. And the business sort of grew from there.
But your background has nothing to do with software development or anything like that.
No.
You're a neuroscientist. A background anyways.
That's right, yeah. So when I was building the first version, when we were kind of collaborating on this project, way before it became a company or a business, Spotful was a side project, and I was studying neuroscience, doing my master's at Dalhousie, and my focus was on human learning and behavior. So I was really interested in how human beings connected with one another, how memories got formed and lasted. And so Spotful's original sort of architecture and interactions were based around real conversation. And I believe, and our whole team really gets beyond the fact that that's why it works.
How did your training guide the business? I'm curious because it seems like we're trying to get more convenience out of our tech, and even just a couple extra clicks is a couple too many sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like Josh was saying in the intro. A lot of the content that we see now, we know that content's king, and that's become very real for businesses, for every type of media publisher, right? Whether I'm an Instagram star, an influencer, or I'm a travel company, video is currency. But there's so much of it now, and Spotful's been built around the fact that we have to gain a certain respect for our customer, our audience, give them the ability to interact, understand the attention graph, and kind of build to that. So, in interactive video, there are a lot of body bags along that road. There are a lot of people who have attempted what we've built, and have failed, right? when we kind of drill down on the reasons why this is working today, I think that the fundamental reason is respect for that audience and respect for the publisher. Build something in the way that people want to consume.
And I believe you said it to me in an off-air interview, sell it and it will come. When we come back from the break, we'll look at the first few days of Spotful with Andrew.
We're chatting about Spotful with Andrew Murray on today's Entrepreneur Tonight.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult FL Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
This evening, we're chatting with Andrew Murray of Spotful. This is a tech company that puts apps and technology embedded into the video, so you can watch a video and interact with the product at the same time.
And when you're talking to Andrew, and he said he started about 3.5, 4 years ago, but when he started and he went to go sell, it was maybe a little bit before this product actually existed. So Andrew, maybe you can kind of fill in the gaps or tell us that story and how you kind of lived by the sell it and it will come.
Absolutely. I think our story is similar to a lot of Canadian startups, a lot of Canadian companies. We, when faced with challenges with access to capital, growth funds, and stuff like that, Spotful was started with really advanced sales, or that's what we call it today. So we had a great kind of PowerPoint deck, some awesome sort of animations of what the product would look like. Of course, that was at a point where we had proven that we could do what we were going to do, and we immediately went to customers. There was no ramp up. There was no, okay, let's build an executive summary and let's get a great business plan together. That was never like a train of thought that entered into like our company. It was like, look, we know we can do this. We know that it could look like that if we had a couple great customers behind this. Let's go talk to them.
Was it tough getting through the front door at first? I mean, it's a brand new product. There weren't too many people out there that were doing this at the time, I don't believe.
Josh, I don't really remember. I don't remember having a huge amount of trouble getting in there. I think, if you're motivated, you've got something that you're really excited about, there's not a lot of people who can turn you down, who can kind of shut down the volume on that. So we wound up in a lot of great rooms, telling a story that we really believed.
So was your marketing pounding the pavement? Like, how did they know about Spotful, or
100%. Oh yeah, 100%. Like we had no kind of social media behind that, no marketing budget, nothing like this. It was really, I believed from day one that if I could go out there, show this to people, convince them that it was real, then build something great around that drove data, that drove success, then that's a business case that I can leverage up really as far as I can go. So, and that proved true. And even today, it seems like a bit of a reckless strategy, and we chatted about this offline, but, and it is 100%. I admit that. However, today it still drives 100% of our product development. We develop, client first. So I will never expand into like a new territory or into like a new kind of feature. I will never invest in anything as a company unless I've got a client sitting in front of me saying, I want this and I'm willing to pay for it. So we're still doing that, right?
Well, that's great. Certainly there might be other marketing initiatives that have kind of taken their own lead on your social media, but we'll talk about that when we come back from the break. And of course, you need a team around you to make sure these get done. So we'll chat about that as well.
Also, some tips on international taxes as we are in the month of March, leading up to, of course, the big deadlines. But first, at 7.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult FL Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
7:35. Welcome back to today's Entrepreneur, a program about the entrepreneurial spirit that drives Quebec business. My name is Dan Delmar, along with FL's Josh Miller, and another example tonight of a very interesting tech startup here in Montreal, Spotful. Andrew Murray joins us, and this is a company that produces video content, and more specifically, interactive video content. So unlike those ads on YouTube that are sort of popping into your face, this is actually part of the content, so you can really dive into your videos. It's
super interesting, and certainly the amount of information that you might be collecting as people are clicking on must be huge. I know, Dan, we've spoken about big data, Internet of Things before on the program, but I'll kind of turn to Andrew and say you must, over the last little while, be collecting a huge amount of this, what they call big data.
Absolutely, guys. It's a completely new data set. The media space has really never seen this before, and that's what excites us and a lot of our clients. And that can simply be explained by the fact that when we report and measure data, it's not in terms of just a video. The video has become a platform. It's become a website, right? So when I come back to you as a client and tell you what your data looks like on that video, I'm not reporting views, engagement, or like time spent. I'm going way beyond that. I'm telling you actual page views. I'm telling you engagement rates that are in the 40s, 50s, 60s%, right? And I'm telling you actual in-video conversion. So I can tell you, how many signups or transactions that video was responsible for.
When you went into Spotful to begin with about 3.5 years ago, did you think it would spin off such a great amount of data?
I don't know. It was abstract. We were doing advanced sales, right? We were having a great time. We were getting this out there, and yeah, of course. I mean, at some point, we envisioned building a platform around it like this, where people can manage it and see it. But what we're seeing now is bigger than what we ever thought.
So the fact that you have more conversions than YouTube in terms of people interacting with the content, why is the product a more evolved version of what's on YouTube right now? Is it because it's sort of a very interactive, immersive experience?
Yeah, kind of, Dan. I mean, like it comes down to the actual user or the audience's experience. How do you want to buy something? Do you want to if I'm going to buy a ticket to a Rihanna show, right? I'm going to buy into her tour, but I get engaged into that idea through a music video. Do I want to click on an annotation in that video in order and cut the audio, the visual, and link out to a flat catalog where I'm seeing, my different options? Spotful has introduced an opportunity to actually make that buy a part of your viewing experience. It's not intrusive. It's not breaking anything down. It's actually bringing you closer to the publisher. And that's why I say, the platform has been built fundamentally on this idea of respect for the publisher's goals and respect for the audience's experience. And I think that both sides of the coin really demand that today.
Now, technology obviously plays this huge role in it. Has it changed since you started? I mean, it must be moving so rapidly. How do you keep up? How do your developers keep up? And at what point do you trigger, we better kind of change a certain platform or a certain look?
Well, yeah, it's developing extremely quickly right now. We came in at a very opportune time. We got very lucky with that. We built in languages that were more versatile, more flexible than other attempts at this in the past. So we got lucky in that regard. But in terms of competition and market demand, we talk to a lot of customers. We have about 1,000 active enterprises using Spotful right now. And they will tell us very quickly what they want to achieve out of video. When you open up this kind of Pandora's box to major businesses, major enterprises, they've got the marketing teams, they've got the guys who can sit at that meeting and tell you, well, if you're giving us the opportunity to support any web function inside those videos, this is how we want to measure success. And we will, we're committed to coming to the table to make that possible.
Do you do that in a proactive way, or you just basically, your customers are reaching out to you saying, no, we want more of that?
It's a little bit of both. I mean, we monitor the market very, very closely, obviously, but we've got enough exposure and enough great kind of a large, diverse client base that it comes to us pretty quickly too. And again, we develop client first. So when a new feature shows up, it's because someone showed up to our office and asked us for it, right?
Now, it takes, I'm sure, a phenomenal team to keep this going and to really be that much more creative and think out of the box. So talk to us a little bit about the first few days, the first team and how it kind of grew from there.
Yeah, we have a phenomenal team. Our company, my first team started in my apartment in Rosemont. We were there for, I think, 6 or 7 months before my girlfriend, now fiance, kicked us out. But Yeah, we hired off Kijiji. We brought people in from kind of all walks. We were looking for developers in the early days. I was doing all product design, so that was before the product was sexy and sleek like it is now. But yeah, we've kind of the team's grown out hugely over that time.
How many are you today? About?
We're 25, I believe.
Now, when you hire, do you have a certain philosophy? Do you go out and hire the best of the best? You found them on Kijiji. You're not going to find headhunters or recruiters. Do you look for skill, attitude? Like, what's your philosophy when you're hiring?
So this has been a tough one for us. We've tried a lot of different things. We've had a lot of advice from investors, both the right investors and the wrong investors. We've gone through that, like a lot of companies have. Our philosophy at the very beginning was honestly that we didn't want to hire great people. I don't want this super experienced guy who's been 30 years in the business and knows this in and out. I want someone who's hungry, interested, super connected to the product, and is willing to kind of put a lot on the line along with me, because I don't have co-founders, right? Mm-hmm. So I consider my whole like core team my co-founders. So I want people who are not necessarily great, but are good and can become great through the development of the company and the product. And that's what has kind of built our family.
Do you find that using that style, they stay almost more attached to the company? They feel that much more a part of it because somebody gave them a chance? Absolutely.
I mean, at the beginning, yes, 100%. And that was the philosophy. What I've found through that is, the guys who work with me today, the guys who work out of our office and in our other office, even like our international sort of offices in Europe and Japan, they're committed to the product in the way that you don't see teams usually. And at the beginning, it was all about, I can empower them to become, connected. It was a retention strategy and all that other stuff that's really important. But at the end of the day, like now, when I look around the room, like they're true leaders. And we've built a culture of entrepreneurship here where I can send any one of those guys out, from like the back-end engineer to the BD guy who's doing 100 calls a day, to any event, any show like this, and they can rep the product as well as I can.
Now, you talk about culture, you talk about different locations here, Japan, Europe. Yeah. How do you maintain that culture across the various countries? How do you maintain that consistency in such a varied group or varied parts of the world? Or you don't.
We've done it through the product.
Yeah.
And this is really, really interesting. So we've tried to take the culture, the thing that binds us together, we've designed it directly into the front end of this product, which is the sales strategy as well, everything else. So, when I sit down with a team in Japan and we talk about why people buy this product and why it's important to put it in their hands, they know the values that this company's built on, because you can see them in the product. There's no obtrusive ads. There's no bullshit. There's nothing jumping out at you. There's no kind of there's nothing that's not in line with our company values. And so it tends to naturally attract people that are excited about technology, that see great opportunity, and that love getting into these types of conversations about, where your communication, your message, and your story is going to evolve to. Right?
I think it's, just to keep track and to keep everybody on the same page and, all throughout the world is quite something. And it's a great aspect, an entrepreneurial aspect of that international business, which is just the segue of going into the next segment, right, Dan?
Yes. Permanent establishment issues. You taught me what that was 5 minutes ago, Josh. Capital gains exemptions and more. Nick Moraitis, tax partner at FL, with some tax talk that is coming up. Plus, Andrew's one piece of advice for today's entrepreneur on the way. But first, 7:45.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult FL Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
Welcome back. Inspiring stories from outstanding business people. Dan Delmar and FL's Josh Miller with you. Andrew Murray of Spotful is our guest this evening, and Andrew's one piece of advice for today's entrepreneur is on the way. But first, some tax talk. Nick Moraitis is here, tax partner at FL. Of course, it's that time of the year, and time to talk about international taxes. Welcome back, Nick.
Hi there, Dan.
And, you know, we were just before the break, we were talking with Andrew and how he has locations, not just here, but Europe and Japan. And I'm sure, Nick, that, and we only have 5 minutes. I'm sure you can talk for 2 hours and 5 minutes, but I'm sure there's a lot of challenges that entrepreneurs need to know when they have their businesses and their operations scattered throughout the world.
And this becomes a little bit more tricky when you're looking at Andrew's line of business where it's software, it's applications. That can sell anywhere in the world. And the governments today are trying to figure out how to tax these products that are coming in anywhere out of the world. And a lot of the rules that we have, which are negotiated through the organization, the OECD, which helps provide examples for tax treaties between the countries, a lot of it is based upon physicality. Where is your office located? Well, if it's located in country A, well, then country A will tax whatever you do in that office. If you have a plant, a mine, that's countries can understand that. But what if you have an app and it goes anywhere? And I, as a consumer, go onto the internet. How do you tax Google? They don't have to physically be in Canada. They can be on the moon, from what I understand. If you
they might
use
be
satellites, they may very well be. So how do you tax that? And that is an enormous battle. Because and that's what we're trying to figure out. So we know that where my website is not a place necessarily that you're going to tax. Where my website provider is, not necessarily. Where my servers are usually is where they're going to look to say, okay, there's that server. Presumably, it's doing something other than just storing data, which is an out. You don't tax that. So it becomes very complicated. And when you're setting up these foreign places, it's very easy to say, I'm going to open up an office in Japan. It's going to be owned by myself here in Canada. Whatever that Japanese entity is going to do, it's going to produce results. You will pay tax in Japan on that entity. But what if you don't need that entity per se there? You can subcontract to some people who will act in the way you want them. They could be market developers. It can be just software developers. But the sales to all your clients, your 1,000 clients that you were saying, is happening here somewhere. Or it's happening somewhere else. Again, on the moon perhaps. How does Canada tax that? And that's the draw here with international taxation, with this cloud business that I call. It's not those fluffy white things as a kid that made animals when you lay back on the grass.
We look at your gray hair.
Yeah, well, that's the problem. I had a lot of trepidation coming in here talking about something that escapes me and listening to you guys before.
What about the people also, the people that are on the ground? You were kind of alluding to it. That must also really play a big role in what their ability is to work to conclude.
Well, then, and this ties in with international. You're usually looking at where are you taxing? What profit are we taxing? We can have people all over the world in little offices, and you can tell them, listen, your job is to do this from 8 to 5, and we're paying you X, and the entity that you're working for is going to make a profit of Y. But the real income that these firms are generating is off the sales coming off from wherever. That profit, that intellectual property, is where? It's sitting where? Who owns it? It's located in which jurisdiction? And then what usually happens, Josh, and in international planning, if you're going to be in Japan, and Japan is a high tax country, well, I want to keep my profits down low, so because it doesn't make sense for me here in Canada. But where's that intellectual property coming from? Who's going to tax it? Do I put it on the moon because there's no taxation on the moon? If I can figure out a way to do that and get the money back here into my pocket, that's what we will do, and that's part of the international plan. And so that's why it's nebulous here.
No, it's definitely a gray zone. When we come back from the break, we'll talk a little bit more on the permanent establishment and of course how it affects if you sell your business.
Yes.
For Canadians, if you sell your business, how do you make sure you can get the most out of the capital gains exemption?
Plus, Andrew Murray's one piece of advice for today's entrepreneur is next.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult FL Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
We'll have Andrew's one piece of advice for today's entrepreneur on the way. But first, Nick Moraitis is with us, tax partner at FL, talking about international tax issues. And Josh, why don't we start with you have a business to sell perhaps, and you sell it abroad. How do you maximize the return?
And I think that's the thing. You start off in one jurisdiction and the business grows. Andrew's a great example of that, and it kind of goes beyond the borders. But ultimately, you're not keeping it forever. You're ultimately probably going to sell it down the road. The question is, how do you minimize that tax? How do you get that capital gains exemption if there's all different moving parts in different parts of the world?
Well, we've discussed it on this show before. Capital gains deduction is available for entrepreneurs who sell the shares of a qualifying business. And one of the qualifying business requirements is that you're conducting business in Canada. So if your business here is the owner of your subsidiaries or your sister companies located all over the world, all of a sudden the value of your business is not because of the business you're doing here, it's because of the business you're doing offshore, which then does not grant you that capital gains deduction. And we've seen people stumble into that, because usually the simplest thing to do, I have my business here, let it open up the subsidiary in Japan, off we go, Japan takes off, and all of a sudden you're out, and there's nothing we can do. So usually we end up looking at structures to try to preserve the Canadian unit sort of as a side company, and the international operations as another side company. So when you do sell, the part that is Canadian that qualifies, you can be, as a vendor, cashing in your exemption, and the part that you're selling that is the international, you will be paying tax here in Canada, because that's not what's given. The only other thing I wanted to add, when you permanent establishments is what dictates which country is going to tax you where you are. But the other stuff you have to look at, and we see it a lot with Americans opening up business here, is they ignore domestic law. Just because we have a very rigorous legal system here doesn't mean that where you're going to has the same laws here. So consult with your advisors. The other thing we're finding is if they can't get you on income tax, they will get you on sales tax, or VAT, the value-added tax that 150 countries around the world have. And that's what they're really trying to get at least that way the consumer is going to be paying something to buy something off the internet, and that's what they're attacking. And they get very, very nasty if you've been escaping. And I think, Josh, you've lived through some experiences. They can be very, very nasty. And the final element that we'll mention is if we can't get you on income tax, they can't get you on sales tax, they'll call whatever it is that you're paying in between companies for the rights to access licenses or fees or management. They'll change it and they'll call it something else that they'll be able to tax. So if you're paying a management fee, we call it a royalty, and I can tax a royalty here in Canada where it might not be able. It's international in the field that Andrew is in. Very exciting, very tough, but that's something to keep in mind.
Just before we get to your one piece of advice, Andrew, neuroscientist, software developer, how did you deal, or how did you personally start understanding all this complexity in your own business, or do you leave it to the professionals? Just quickly before we get to your last piece.
It's a reoccurring issue. You have to leave it to the professionals. Don't ever try to extend yourself into your zone of kind of weakness in order to try and fill in those gaps. That is foolish. That's ridiculous. I've seen a ton of people do it. I've seen myself do it many, many times. It's the biggest mistake that any entrepreneur can make.
So now that we finish on that thought with you, let's turn to, we're in the last moment of the show, and ask you, Andrew, what would be your one piece of advice for today's entrepreneur?
Especially Canadian entrepreneurs, I would say, the biggest thing is know yourself, know what you are actually trying to get out of your company and your project and your business, your startup, if it's at that level. I think we're asked very often as entrepreneurs in the early stages, investors will sit in front of you and say, what does this company look like in 5 years? What are you trying to do here? Is this an exit play? Is this tell me about this. We never have answers for it because we always think it's BS. Drill on that, dig very, very deep, and figure out what the answer is for you, because it will change a million times. And if you don't lock it early, you can lose track of it.
Thanks very much, Andrew Murray of Spotful, for dropping up by this evening. We appreciate it.
My pleasure, guys.
Thanks to Nick as well, tax partner at FL. And next week on the show, Josh, we'll talk to a guy who I've interviewed just organically here at CJD, Jesse Herbert from Oopsmark. He's an inventor. This is the guy that built the bicycle wine rack. The bicycle
wine rack. I know. Jesse Herbert, yeah.
Next Monday at 7. Don't forget to listen to past episodes of Today's Entrepreneur at flmontreal.com. Click on the community section, and we'll see you next week. Good night.